Rick Montalavo. Sir, you're charged with a felony offense of possessing a prohibited weapon.
Judge, on September the 5th, 2019, approximately 1:26 in the morning, officers were riding patrol in the area of North Shepherd Drive and Victory Drive when they observed a green and color Ford F-150 pickup truck that was not displaying a license plate to the rear of the vehicle. Officers then conducted a traffic stop for the above violation and made contact with the driver, who was identified as Rick Montalvo. They approached the defendant's vehicle and began to speak with the driver. When they made contact with the defendant advised that he had multiple firearms inside the cab of his vehicle, at which time the officers observed a long gun, namely a tan in color AR-15 style assault rifle, wedged in between the driver's seat and the center console, with the muzzle of the rifle pointing downward into the driver floorboard. Officer Munoz advised the defendant to step out of the vehicle to separate him from the firearm for officer safety, so he could positively identify the defendant. The officer opened the passenger side door to assist the defendant in unbuckling his seatbelt due to the above rifle being in direct contact with the defendant's seatbelt buckle. At this point, and again for officer safety to see what's happening with the firearm at this point. After removing the defendant's seatbelt, the defendant stepped out of the vehicle and advised that he did not have his driver's license on him. Officer Munoz then detained the defendant, and the defendant was handcuffed for officer safety while the rest of the investigation was conducted. They placed the defendant in the back seat of the marked patrol vehicle and, as I stated, conducted the rest of the investigation. The defendant provided his name and date of birth, which resulted in finding that this defendant had 12 active municipal warrants out of the city of Houston, or confirmed. Officers at this point placed the defendant under arrest. They did gain verbal consent from the defendant to search his vehicle for any illegal items. After conducting a search of the defendant's vehicle, they located a tan and black color AR-15 style rifle that had what the officer notes to be a black in color suppressor affixed to the end of the barrel of the assault rifle. Officers know through his training and experience through law enforcement that the owner of any suppressor must have a tax stamp showing that the suppressor is registered with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, or ATF, administration, or the owner is in violation of the law, specifically possessing a prohibited weapon at this point. They did confirm through the database with ATF that this defendant did not have a suppressor registered with ATF, and it was not a relic or anything that would not qualify under the statute. Also, it should be noted, Judge, that the officers called an updated intake that the suppressor had no serial number. Also, it is the same model as a silencer. It is the same thing as a silencer, Judge. Officers stated that the defendant is a former Marine with an extensive mental health history. The defendant also had papers inside the vehicle stating something to the effect of, quote, "They say I'm the white boy who shoots up schools," unquote, along with poems talking about death. He had a sniper canopy, camouflage tactical gear, and a military screening system to hide underneath, making you undetectable from an aerial view.
All right, sir, there is probable cause to detain you. Would you like to have Ms. Carter help you with your bond, sir?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Judge, I'm going to ask for a $2,000 bond. I'm not quite sure where that statement of the white boy that shoots up schools, I'm not quite sure where that came from. My client is a Marine, cover his mental health history.
It came from the police officer.
Okay, for
I'm
his
told
arrest.
that it's added to the bottom of the DIM summary. The police officer called and spoke to the prosecutor who filed the charges.
I'll put it this way, Judge, I don't have the newest DIM summary. So, I would like to make note that Mr. Montiavo has no criminal history as of right now. I know that his last case, he was able to get dismissed 2 years ago. Was not violent. It was just a PCS case. So he scores at a 1-1. He right now is living in Spring, Texas. He works as a private security company for Mr. Patel. He was a Marine. He was a Marine for 5 years, where he served in Guantanamo Bay. As for his mental health history, I'm going to say that as for right now, that's irrelevant to because he's been seeing a therapist for that. Now it's out in the open. And so based off all of that, I'm going to ask for a $2,000 PR bond.
And what says the state?
Judge, we are asking for a $200,000 bond in this case. I would note that this is, quite frankly, just the kind of case that everyone hopes that we find before something horrible happens. This defendant fits this, the MO that he writes in his documents found in the car. I am the white boy who shoots up schools. He has an AR-15 that has a silencer on it. He has tactical gear for no apparent purpose other than something tragic to do with this. Sniper canopy, camouflage, tactical gear, military screening where you can't be seen by a helicopter or anything goes over from aerial view. It's very scary, quite frankly. And I think for the safety of the community, it's very concerning that this defendant would make such statements and be armed with an assault rifle. And so we're asking the court to set a $200,000 bond, at least until more can be learned about this case and this defendant's mental health before he is released, and for the threat of and the safety of the community. Yes.
Judge, if I may,
Sure.
I'm going to object to the relevance of him, because that has nothing to do with the charge at hand, which is possession of the prohibited weapon, which is just the silencer on the gun. I did state before that he is working as private security as his job. And so, number one. Number two, again, just because he fits an MO, that's not what he's charged with. And to say that he fits the MO of a shooter I don't feel like that's relevant at this point in time. He has no violent criminal history. And so to say that he would shoot up something, I don't feel like, I don't understand how that's probative.
And first of all, let me just say that the entire circumstances of the arrest are to be considered on a bond hearing, which is what we're in right now.
Yeah,
and I would say, Judge, with all due respect, this is all we get before something horrible happens. So I am asking for a $200,000 bond on this defendant, and for the safety of the community, we're asking for a high bond to be set.
Well, the statute does say nature and circumstances of the offense, and this is part of the nature and circumstances of the offense. So, and it is troubling, and not to be picky, but once a Marine, always a Marine. Because you said he used to be a Marine. That's in the service. A Marine is always a Marine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
But it does concern me, sir. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the state's recommendation. I'm going to set the bond at $200,000. You are going to be seeing the judge in the 184th District Court in a very short period. You certainly can get to that court where people are going to have a lot more information than I have right here and right now. I just have to go based on the very barest of allegations. When you get to that court, you'll be surrounded by a lot more information and a lot more opportunity to present what you need to present. So for now, it's $200,000. Would you like to have a court-appointed lawyer? You're going to hire a lawyer, sir.
Yeah, I would need a court-appointed lawyer, yes.
Okay. All right, sir. And from your service, I know that you are a U.S. citizen.
I work private security. That's the reason why for all that year, and I explained that to everyone that was there. And I cooperated with every law enforcement officer that was there. I explained everything to them. I didn't impede the investigation at all.
I'm certainly not arguing that with you, sir. I just have to go based on the nature of the allegations at this point without any surrounding context. You'll have that context when you get to court, sir. If you were in my position, you would probably want to err on the side of caution just because that's the prudent thing to do.
This country, okay?
That's just the prudent thing to do for a short period of time. Thank you very much, sir. You may have a seat.